According to Noel Carroll, horror films must contain monsters which are unknown to contemporary science that the positive characters find scary and disgusting in order to be considered part of their genre. This claim is a strong and relevant foundation on which to build a definition of horror, but what I want to question specifically is its expectation of horror films requiring a monster in the first place. For in instances such as art dread, horror is able to create its trademark horrifying effect without using any monsters of Carroll's definition, but simply by playing on a broader and more profound fear of what we don't understand. In his analysis, Carroll refers to monsters as abnormal disturbances of the natural order associated with revulsion, nausea, and disgust within the genre. However, films like The Sixth Sense and The Others contradict this rule, making them technically films without monsters by Carroll's definition. Furthermore, Carroll states that the audience's emotions in a horror film should mirror those of the positive human characters within the narrative. Yet, positive, like monster, is a subjective term. Horror films such as Midsommar and Mother represent supposedly positive characters who are or become all too comfortable with something the audience perceives as horror, and this only increases our fear. These films make us feel unsafe by using symbolic imagery and openly interpreted narrative tools in place of outright physical monsters to disrupt the mirror of emotion between audience and characters and relate not necessarily to Carroll's definition of a monster, but rather to something ineffable or intangible, something sinister that both the audience and the positive characters do not understand. Death, the meaning of life, and interpreting the line between the two are all themes art dread horror films play on, because they are all things we tend not to understand, and thus human instinct tells us they are dangerous. Stuart Hanscombe echoes this point, emphasizing the dread created in horror when an entity is unknown by virtue of not adhering to familiar categories. Religious allegories, such as the narrative of Mother, work effectively within art dread, which Carroll describes as a sense of unease or awe that perhaps concealed and inexplicable forces rule the universe. Cynthia Freeland observes that this description has religious overtones, noting that because dread involves contact with something very vast and overwhelming, it can also include awe, admiration, or reverence. Again, these religious themes come back to a fear of something too vast for us to understand. Life, death, existence, and non-existence. We don't need monsters to scare us when our foreboding lack of answers to the truth of the world we live in is already creeping up behind us. Thus, I believe Carroll's claim would benefit from taking into account that hostile forces in horror extend beyond monsters, and can often take the form of things we fear not because of what they are, but because of what they represent, the eerie gaps in our understanding of the world.